Actually, Nisha, you got it just right. Jill Jacobi-Vessels.
Fantastic.
And
For
I
those
take
of you who are just joining us, we got two more talks. Please put your comments in the chat and we will talk about them with time permitting. Go, Jill.
All right, thank you, Nisha. So I wanted to share with you some work that I've been doing in the early childhood education community. I have been working with community coordinated childcare and Metro United Way and many other stakeholders in early childhood education to enhance the quality of services across the Louisville area in the hopes of helping children be more prepared for kindergarten. And so I was fortunate to be part of a pilot project that was a collaboration with Metro United Way and 4C's Community Coordinated Childcare. And it was an attempt to change the general workshop approach that is often used in early childhood for professional development. Many people who work in early childhood centers, and I'm talking private centers across the area rather than school systems, many of the staff members have a high school diploma or a GED. And then you also have staff members who have child development associates all the way up to master's degrees. And every staff member is required to complete 15 hours of state approved training every year to remain in compliance with regulations. And that is a big expense for centers. And so this group, this community's practice group, offered centers 18 hours of free state approved training and funding to support substitutes to cover teachers while they were in training as an incentive to encourage people to sign up for this program. The goal was to increase the best practices used in centers within targeted zip codes. And the way that zip codes were identified were based on Brigance scores, which is the kindergarten readiness screener used across Kentucky. And so a community of practice, for those not in education, is basically a group of people who share some commonality for something they do and learn. And in this case, it was people working in early childhood centers. This approach is very different from what most people in early childhood experience. Most people will choose a workshop because the timing of it happened to work for when they were available, or they might do an online module, but it's a very disjointed approach to selecting professional development. There's not often a lot of thought about how to move from this knowledge level to this knowledge level in an area of interest. It's more, I think I'll take that workshop because it's available when I need it, and I like art, so I will do that. And so this was a big change in what is normally offered to early childhood people. So in order to make this very accessible across the Louisville community, there were 3 different locations where teachers in infant toddler groups, preschool teachers, and directors could go to meet with one another and discuss how to change their practice. The other thing that was very different about this approach is that it wasn't a one-stop shop. It was returning for 9 months, once a month, to discuss topics with the same group of people. So the idea was that people would be able to share their own experiences and expertise to learn from one another. The focus of these workshops that were really not just that one stop was to change the approaches often used in early childhood classrooms. Traditionally, most classrooms will use a theme-based approach. So this week we're going to study the zoo, and whether or not the kids are interested in zoo, that's what we're going to talk about. So instead, it was much more child-centered. They were teaching early childhood teachers how to observe the children and see what they were thinking and learning, and then base the curriculum on the children's displayed interests. There was a lot of sensory play and use of loose parts. So that means using little tree cookies and little manipulatives to create small worlds, dinosaurs in a forest, and see how children engaged with those. So it was very open-ended materials as opposed to some of those commercially produced materials that are often seen in early childhood classrooms. It was a lot of looking at what the children were interested in learning about and allowing them to take risks to learn new things. Very reflective, learning about children as capable learners, talking about relationships and conflict negotiation. So the research questions for this particular project were, what, if any, effect does being in this COP have on the teacher's sense of efficacy? What, if any, effect does COP participation have on their classroom practices? And what, if any, effect does participation have on kindergarten readiness efforts? So we did some pre-test measures, post-test measures, doing structured group interviews and a teacher's sense of efficacy scale. We had a comparison group of teachers who took those workshop approach classes over the same time frame. And those are the measures that we use, the teacher's sense of efficacy scale. I'm trying to talk fast here. And what we found is that we really did not have any statistical significance, but that was quite likely due to the fact that there were far fewer people who enrolled in the COPs than was expected. So it was a much smaller sample size, which reduced the power. In addition, there was a great deal of issue with the number of participants who were available to attend both pre-test and post-test measures, or even to attend these sessions on a regular basis. And that is kind of characteristic of the early childhood community. There is a great deal of turnover in centers. Teachers come and go very frequently, and being able to free them up to go to the trainings once a month, even though centers made that commitment, it was very, very difficult, because if other staff called out sick, your staff member could not go to the COP. So I'm showing you here those issues with attendance that we saw. The directors, we had a mean attendance of 5.3 out of 9 sessions. Infant toddlers, 4.1 mean. Preschool teachers, 5.5 mean. And the M is for mixed. Those are floaters, substitutes who move from classroom to classroom, with a mean of 5.0 sessions attended. So we relied very heavily on our pre-post interviews. We triangulated the findings between the interviews, meeting reflections, and the instructor's reflections of the course. And again, you can see attrition was a concern. Of 110 total participants, 22 treatment and 17 comparison completed pre and post-test measures. And so we found that attendance did increase their sense of efficacy. They felt like they became better teachers and had a lot of power in having conversations with peers and coming back to talk to their own centers. Their practices did change over time. They did have a bumpy road learning those new practices and feeling like it was a little bit radical and uncomfortable, but discussion through the COPs made them willing to take those chances. They did change their kindergarten readiness skills, focusing a lot on social, emotional, and behavioral skills.
You go ahead and finish up, Jill. You got just 20 seconds or so.
Thank you very much. Okay. And so we learned a lot of lessons about not combining groups, because people were not comfortable talking when somebody else was in the room. And the length of commitment was an issue for attendees. And that is it. Thank you, Nisha.
No problem.